One thing that's amazing about America is we want to win everything and be the best at everything. The problem is that trickles down to 6-year-old soccer games.
So Landon Donovan just was on the State of the Union podcast and had a pretty interesting take on what is wrong with development of youth soccer in the United States. I'm Sebastian North. Welcome to Campfire Football. Let's go over this. So as a disclaimer, I am a youth coach. I have been one for 10 years. I've coached everything from 4-year-olds who have never touched a ball before all the way to a high school varsity team that's won 2 state titles. So it's the entire range of kids down from the never-evers to ECNL players. A lot of people have ideas about what is wrong with youth soccer in America. So without further ado, let's just kick off the video and hear a little bit of what Landon Donovan has to say, and I'll pick apart the bones of what I see because there are a few things I agree with, but also think it's a little bit more complicated. For a little bit of context, before Landon Donovan really got into this, he was talking about how he was at the Euros and he was kind of astounded at the level of some of the top teams and how all of their players are world class, and then they even had to leave some back home. So it's the depth of talent that he sees as that's where the gap is between the bigger teams in the world and the United States.
It was progressing, I think, quite well, but I've also spent a lot of time now. Look, my kids are in youth soccer, and I see the youth soccer environment. It's a disaster.
Yes, disaster. I agree to a certain extent, of course, because it's not totally broken. We're still producing players. I mean, Caven Sullivan, 14 years old, playing in MLS next, getting his start for Philadelphia Union, and will be going to Man City when he turns 17 or 18. That is a very good positive thing. He looks like an absolute proper player, and there are many, many more from that age group that are going to be really good players. So the pool is getting bigger.
It's an absolute disaster. And the kids they are developing because they're spending time with a ball and doing things, but not nearly at the rate they could be. And it's wasteful. It's really wasteful.
We are seeing a significant raising of the level. I mean, overall, I grew up in the 90s and, early 2000s playing, and the level was solid. It was getting better, but now what you see from a lot of kids, especially really young ones, I work with some pretty high-level 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, and they're really, really good. So, yes, the overall pool of players, the level is getting better. Kids are progressing. But what he's saying here is that not as much as they should be. So the really talented kids who are super good by 8 or 9, they could be better. And then the ones who are sort of the mid-levels, they really need to get better. And we'll get into a little bit more about that as we go.
Very talented young athletes and players, and they get better, but not the way other players in other countries are getting better. So,
but whose fault is that disaster?
The only guy to blame is Paul Pogba. The guy is a disgrace to football.
Great question. That's $1 million question. And this is the thing that's interesting is if you look at the comments, for instance, I saw this video, just a 1-minute clip that was on Instagram. And when I read the comments underneath, there were a lot of very cogent, intelligent ideas for what the problems are. But the same things also keep coming up. Pay to play, stop making, fields essentially inaccessible, make more fields that are just, public, like putting goals underneath basketball hoops on all courts, right? Make them hybrid, and a bunch of other things, right? There's so many ideas people have. And I have to say, everyone is right when it comes to mentioning what the problems are. Now, what the key problem is or who the key people are to blame, that gets a lot more complicated.
It's a cultural problem in America. One thing that's amazing about America is we want to win everything and be the best at everything. The problem is that trickles down to 6-year-old soccer games.
You gotta love how Alexi Lalas, as soon as he heard a comment of like, this is what makes America great, basically, he's like, yeah. I just think that there's something here that's a little bit misguided. Basically, what Landon is saying is that there's a certain level of exceptionalism in the United States. We love to win. We love to be the winners. We love to be number one. Unfortunately, that uniqueness that we have, that exceptionalism, it backfires on us, and we do it in the wrong places.
The emphasis for a 6-year-old should be on getting better, not winning soccer games.
Agreed. It really, really should be. But why do people care so much about winning soccer games?
And I have, there's coaches that I hear say, this coach we're coaching against next week is my arch nemesis. We have to win this game.
What the hell did you just say?
And he's coaching 7-year-olds. And I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, that does happen. I've heard that before. I hear that a lot from parents sometimes too. Like they don't like a parent or two or a kid on the other team and they're like, we've got to beat those guys. So thing is, this is a very human thing to identify some kind of enemy in the opponent and then deem it more important than a usual day that you've got to win this one because. And yeah, there are coaches, and I've faced some who clearly have an issue, either with the club you're with or with, the organization, and say they sort of take it out on you. Just to give you an example, the club I used to coach for, we had multiple branches, and that's because there was a merger. And after the merger, there were some of the branches that kind of did not want to become our club. One of them in particular, every time we would play this North branch, the games got ugly. Coaches were super hardcore. Parents were yelling at my own players. I was coaching a U14 girls team, and there were parents on the opposing team calling my girls entitled little brats from, the central branch in Denver or whatever. It's completely insane. And now that's your motivation and you're forgetting entirely about development. So yes, that does happen.
That's not what it's about. Or this tournament is really important to our club. We have to win. So,
and that does happen as well. I think obviously there's some tournaments that give you more notoriety. I personally think that for individual teams, it does not matter at all. But if you were to say, okay, what happened at the Dallas Cup or Surf Cup, and you notice that one club in particular has won titles at numerous age groups and in numerous divisions, that does give you a little pause and you go, man, they as an organization must be doing something great.
Of the 10 players, 5 of you might not play as much because we have to win this tournament at 7 years old. It's ridiculous.
There's some people out there who are like, well, yeah, you want to win, you don't play the worst players. Well, okay, you don't make them better. And this is maybe part of the issue of what he was talking about in terms of kids aren't getting actually that much better. I'd say the mid-level players who are never going to be elite, even in the youth game, or even make it to college, or even get nominated for high school honors, for instance. If you can get that mid-level of player to be technically better, it'll force the already technically good players to be smarter. And that's what you need to really succeed at the highest levels. You've got to have the physicality, you've got to have the technique, and you need the ability to think through the game. Then there's also just the mental side of who's tough mentally and who's not. But when thinking about kids, how many kids are so mentally tough that if you bench them, they go, I'm taking that as a front, I'm coming back, I'm going to train twice as hard, and I'm going to prove you wrong, coach. The reality is there are very few of them. You may like to think that every kid who is told to sit down is just going to prove to you why they should be on the field. But that's not what happens. A lot of kids, if you don't play them, they just get worse. A, because, they're not playing, but B, because you're killing their confidence. And confidence is absolutely massive, especially for young children. So let's keep going with what he has to say, and then I'll bring it home.
It's absolutely ridiculous. The incentive structure is totally backwards. And we will never compete at that level unless we get that part right.
Okay, so that's all he had to say. Now, the one thing I really have to mention here, the thing that he said about our culture, and I have asked friends, colleagues of mine who are from different countries. I work with some German guys. I know plenty of people in the UK. My dad's from there, so I know some coaches there. I've also seen videos with my eyes of what happens sometimes in other countries at youth games. And the reality is, the insanity exists everywhere. None of these people say, oh yeah, no, we have a really great culture of parent behavior on sidelines in our country. You never see the stuff you do in the US. No one ever says that kind of thing. This is a human thing, right? I have seen videos in Brazil of a youth game. The kids are 10, 11, 12 maybe. And the people on the sidelines are just constantly yelling. The parents, they're going nuts. The kids lose. You see parents go out and yank their son and just drag him off the field or go in. I've seen videos of parents going on the field and yelling at their kids during the game. Not while the ball's rolling, but ball goes in the net, a parent will run out and yell at their kid before the next kickoff. I mean, most people have probably seen the video of the dad who pushes his kid onto the field in the goal. And that happened in the UK. So this idea that this American exceptionalism of we want to win so bad and that's why we behave poorly at the youth levels, unfortunately for Landon, I actually disagree with him entirely on this one. This is something that happens everywhere. I actually think it's a lot more about the way businesses are run, the way clubs are run, and the way the coaching education from the very top down goes. I don't have a whole lot of faith in USSF, the federation. I've done my E, D, and C license. And I probably will never bother with the B because I have seen what people have to go through to do it, and it doesn't feel very valuable. On the note of what can really fix this, like what's the big problem? As I said, there's so many people with ideas on this. Pay to play tends to be the number one thing people focus on. And there's also problems with just saying we need to make soccer cheaper. It's true, it does need to be cheaper because I think there's a lot of rent seeking that happens from the clubs. I think there's a lot of sort of predatory style price points, right? Where people are like, well, we know they're going to pay because there aren't really other options. Or clubs will maybe really, really focus on the groups that are going to pay the most money and try and make sure that those people are satisfied while charging a pretty hefty amount for what's supposed to be just like a basic product, like rec soccer. I mean, there are some clubs who need parent volunteers to coach the kids at 6, 7 years old. Some of these people have never played the game. They're just kind of pushed into this thing of like, well, now you're going to coach soccer, and they're 6 and 7, and you've never done it before. And by the way, you're charging $600 per kid. So basically, we're just giving you field space for what you're paying for. And that is obviously bad. But I could go down the list of things that are problematic because I've been working in the youth game now for 10 years, as I said, with kids of all ages and levels. And there are so many things that are going wrong. But remember, every single country has problems of their own. We have a big geographical issue. Some countries don't because they're far tighter and it's easier for people to just exchange ideas and move around and get competition. Where I live in Colorado, there's only so many clubs within driving distance. There's only so many competitive clubs within driving distance because you don't have these big markets like you do on the East Coast. What is obviously needed is better development at the younger age groups. And I just think, just to cap it off, I really do think that technical skills have been massively lacking. I think a lot of people look at what has been done in, say, Belgium or Holland, and they say, the kids just play 3v3 up until they're 11, and they don't keep score. Well, it's like, first of all, they do. The kids keep score. Don't even tell me for 1 second the kids don't know what the score of a game is. But also, they may be playing 3v3, but that's not literally all they're doing. They're just sending kids out there playing 3v3 and explaining pressure, cover, balance defensively, and here's how you make third man runs offensively. No, they're also doing technical work. And we in the United States, I feel a lot of clubs are saying that's not necessary. The technical will come in terms of playing the game. But you also have to teach kids how to do things. And if you never do, they don't build some of the right habits. You don't raise the technical level of the sort of middle class soccer player, if you will, which then forces the better players, the more talented ones, to be higher level. That's my take on this whole thing. I thought that Landon Donovan said something interesting, and the way people react to this topic in particular, it's always fascinating. All right, thanks for stopping by. I'm Sebastian North. This is Campfire Football. Take it easy.